Oh, there you are. Hi, welcome to my garden. Working on the trellis a little bit today. But if you work at it a little bit each day, it doesn't get out of hand. And I've got quite a few tomatoes in. But that's the abundance of planting by seed. I did get a question about the trellis system from a viewer that's growing in a container garden. We'll go ahead and talk about the trellis here just a little bit, but I need to prune up a couple more tomatoes. Now, it's only been a few days since I've looked at this side, but the suckers grow really fast. So you want to make sure you get all the suckers out, and any leaves that are touching the ground, just go ahead and clip those out. And then make the wraps. Just gently lift those leaves up, let them fall back. These smaller suckers you can just kind of pinch out with your fingers. And there you go. See, like this one, a couple of these lower leaves, we can go ahead and take those off. A little bug damage there, and then the sucker's starting to grow. But we're not growing suckers and we're not growing leaves, we're growing fruit. We've got quite a few tomatoes already set across the garden here. So see how that opens that up, makes it nice and airy? Take off all this lower stuff. See, little bitty tomatoes everywhere. One of the reasons we like this trellis system is anytime the wind blows, it vibrates the entire line, and that's what helps make them pollinate. And we got some nice beets growing in underneath here. Just keep the suckers and those lower leaves that are touching the ground pruned out. And air and sun are the two best friends to your tomatoes. And just that quick, we got a section done. Now you don't have to discard all of your suckers. 9 days ago I took this one and I dropped it in a glass of water. Look at the roots on that. The question on trellising was perfect timing. I did have a plan. We planted this row of squash, but this one, something ate it, it disappeared, don't know. So we're going to go ahead and plant this. Now that's a worm. So that's telling me the castor oil is working. The moles have gone because we got worms. I also got a question about planting seeds underneath your mulch. Planted these seeds on Memorial Day weekend and they're already germinating. I now ascribe to the Roos Stout method, where we just barely rough up the top of the soil, sprinkle the seeds out, make good soil contact, and then sprinkle a little bit of mulch back around it. Now lettuce is one you don't want to put hardly any, if any, mulch on top. They don't like to push up to that. But as these get a little bigger, I am going to thin a couple of these out and put them in containers, and then we'll mulch heavy back around them. Carrots are another example of seeds that you want to keep moist, but you don't want any mulch on the top. And they don't like to be buried very deep at all. We planted these beets a couple weeks ago, and I went ahead and put some mulch on top of them. They pushed right on up through there. And with all of these, I didn't use any kind of hoe to make a trench. Just use my fingers to rough up the soil. With any planting in the deep mulch, we just pull that mulch back to soil in the smallest area we need to plant. You see, we got some nice wood chips there. It's still breaking down. And since I'm planting a tomato, and this is still only a couple years in, you can see that the structure in that clay is improving a lot, but it's still orange clay. And you can see right here, the fungus that's growing in here as it breaks down the organic matter, that is just beautiful. And then clear that hole out. We're going to backfill with this soil anyhow. Okay, for the tomatoes, this is a game changer. Take your string, I put a little loop in it, right down at the bottom of your hole. Then we'll set the tomato in there, and then we'll backfill. Now remember, this entire stem will root, so I'm going to go ahead and pile that soil up just a little bit on the stem. I hated to do it, but I did take the two lower leaves off because they were touching the ground, and that doesn't do the plant any good. And I took and pinched that flower out simply because at this point we're growing roots, not flowers. Pretty quick we'll be growing tomatoes and not leaves. So then I just take my mulch back around. We got our tomato and we got our string coming up out of the ground. You measure that right back up to the top of your supporting wire. You put just a little tension on it. And what we're going to do is just put a little half hitch in here. That way, as the tomato grows and we trellis up, we can pull this loose, and we can let the vine drop, and it'll still keep growing. That's in theory. Now this is our 4th year of trellising. And I did see where they were trellising squash, so I thought I'd try that out. And when we first put these seeds in, I didn't mark anything, so I'm not 100% sure what squash this is. But it's gotten much taller, much faster than I anticipated. But we still have the half hitch, so if it hits the top, we'll just let this sag down a little bit. We got female flowers coming on, but we'll see what we get. Let's take a look at the trellis itself. The way I did it was pretty simple. I got these poles at an old farm sale. I was able to drill a hole. We ran a guide wire, and that's what we're running our string off of. If you're going to put in a trellis system like this is a good example of, as the weight of the tomatoes start pulling down, it's going to start sagging your top wire. So you need to have your guide wire of a material that is going to be strong enough to support however many tomatoes you have underneath there. Now if you're using a container garden, the container itself needs to be sturdy enough to support the large tomato that's going to grow. Then whatever material you're going to use for your trellis, for your uprights, needs to be strong enough to support that, and then your top wire also needs to be strong enough. In this instance, I was able to use metal poles. You can also take some pieces of wood and a cross piece, screw that together, and then run your strings down off of that. Or if you want to get real fancy, you set this kind of deal up and you put another cross piece right here that makes kind of a T. That way you can run 3 strings off of the same area. But then again, you want to make sure whatever material you're using is going to be strong enough to support the tomatoes that you're going to grow. Rule of thumb, water weighs approximately 8 pounds per gallon. How many gallons of water are in that 12-foot vine? That's a lot of weight that you're going to be carrying. And here as an example, I'm going to use the corner of my compost pile. Say this is your raised bed, this is your container. If you got wood on your container, you can drive a couple screws in there, and that will help hold it. You can wire it up. If it's a small container, you put one of your uprights on either side. You can wire that, you can tape it. There's all kinds of things you can do. Sorry, I got distracted by a shiny object. Get the blueberries when you can get the blueberries. The beauty of this, we got a couple different varieties here. This one's going to finish up, and the one next to it is just now starting to put on some really nice berries. Sorry about that, but that's what really happens in the garden. You'll start working on one thing, you'll see a sucker that needs pruned out, you'll see something that needs trellised up, you'll see something that needs to be eaten. But that's what makes it fun. But back to the trellising. Overdo what you're going to do. My biggest mistake the first time I did it, everything fell over. When you put that little itty bitty seed in the soil for the first time, you cannot imagine how big they're actually going to get and how fast it happens. And that's why we put a little work in every day to keep these pruned up and trellised up. And I want to thank you for coming by the garden, looking at trellising and seeing how you can turn a sucker into a plant. And I'm expecting to get some pretty nice tomatoes off of that sucker. You can do this too, and it's pretty simple. If you'd like to learn more about tomatoes, click that link right there and I'll meet you back here in the garden. If you'd like to learn more about the deep mulch, click that link and I'll meet you right back here in the garden. Until next time, remember, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and God bless you. Come on, let's plant. Let's go plant garden.